Picture this. You or your team have just invented a totally groundbreaking medical device. I mean, it's brilliant. It could save thousands of lives. But obviously, before you can actually sell it, you got to prove that it works safely on real people, right? Well, here's the catch-22. Federal law strictly bans you from shipping unapproved medical tech, period. So how on earth do you get your new invention into the hands of doctors for a clinical trial without, breaking the law? You need a legal exception. It's kind of like a learner's permit, but for medical innovation. Today, we're going to decode exactly how this process works. We'll break down the absolute must-know rules for testing unapproved devices on humans so you can keep your trials moving, keep your patients safe, and honestly, keep your career totally intact. So here is our game plan for today. We'll start with the exemption basics, look at major versus minor risks, map out who exactly does what, run through the strict rules of testing, hit those super tight reporting timelines, and then finally, we'll talk about the heavy costs of getting it wrong. Let's get to it.
All right, part one, the exemption basics. Let's define what we're actually talking about here before we get into the heavy regulatory weeds.
At its core, an exemption is basically your legal hall pass. Normally, you absolutely cannot distribute a medical device unless it has full market approval. But to get that approval, you need real human data. So this exemption fixes that problem. It lets innovators legally ship unapproved devices specifically for research. But please, do not look at this as just some boring, bureaucratic red tape. This whole framework is really the ultimate safeguard of our medical system. It's designed to let science move fast while fiercely protecting the brave people who volunteer for these studies.
You can think of this as a quick cheat sheet for who's who on a trial team. You've got three main players. First, the sponsor. This is the company or person paying the bills and initiating the whole thing. They run the business side, not the patients. Second is the investigator. This is your medical pro, the boots on the ground who actually handles the device and cares for the subjects. And third, the IRB, or Institutional Review Board. This is an independent ethics committee. They are basically the referee, making sure that the safety and rights of the volunteers are never, ever pushed aside for the sake of the trial.
Moving right along to part two, major versus minor risks. This is quite literally the most critical decision your team makes before testing starts.
The thing you have to realize is that the rules treat different devices very, very differently. You have to put your device into one of two buckets. Bucket one is significant risk. We are talking major stuff here. Implants, life support machines, or anything that could seriously harm someone's health. Think of a new artificial heart valve. Bucket two is non-significant risk. This is your everyday, non-invasive stuff. Think of a smart Band-Aid that tracks sweat, or maybe a newly designed tongue depressor. The chance of someone getting really hurt is super low.
And why does this matter so much? Because it completely dictates your roadmap. Step 1, you classify the risk. Step 2, you get your IRB, that ethics board, to approve it. Now, if it's a minor risk and the board agrees, you're usually good to go. But if you're dealing with a major significant risk device, you hit step 3. You have to submit a massive application straight to the FDA, and you absolutely cannot start testing until they give you an explicit green light.
Okay, section 3, who does what? Once your trial is actually green-lit, the real work starts, and regulatory compliance means drawing a very hard line here.
We have to be crystal clear on who is on the hook for what. The sponsor is the architect. They pick the investigators, they constantly monitor the trial to ensure everyone plays by the rules, and they lock in those approvals. The investigator, on the other hand, is entirely focused on patient management. They direct how the prototype is used, they protect the physical well-being of the subjects, and most importantly, they get the patient's consent. There is literally no room for confusion here. Sponsor oversees the trial, investigator oversees the patient.
I really want you to burn this concept into your brain. When it comes to human lives and federal law, a verbal "okay" means absolutely nothing. There is a golden rule in compliance. If it wasn't documented, legally, it just didn't happen. An investigator must educate the volunteer on all the risks and secure a physical signature before that person gets anywhere near an experimental device. If the FDA does an audit and you don't have that paperwork, you are in massive trouble. Proper consent is a non-negotiable absolute.
Which leads us perfectly into part 4, the rules of testing. Once the study is live, you are in a very strict regulatory sandbox.
You know, one of the biggest traps ambitious companies fall into is treating a clinical trial like a marketing campaign. You literally cannot do that. You can't go around promoting the device as safe or effective because, well, that's exactly what you're testing to find out. You can't use the trial to test market to consumers. You definitely can't overcharge subjects just to make a quick buck. You can only cover your basic manufacturing costs. And finally, if the data clearly shows the device isn't working, you can't just drag the study out. You have to shut it down.
And then there's the physical device itself. Every single experimental prototype has to wear a massive warning label. The text essentially has to scream, "Caution, this is strictly for investigational use under federal law." Why? Well, imagine a chaotic hospital setting where approved tools and experimental prototypes might literally be sitting on the exact same counter. This mandatory tag guarantees that a rush doctor doesn't accidentally grab your unvetted device thinking it's a fully approved commercial product.
All right, part 5, reporting and timelines. Because look, no matter how well you plan, things will eventually go off script. And when they do, the clock starts ticking. The regulatory bodies absolutely hate being kept in the dark. Did you have to break protocol during an emergency to save a patient? You have exactly 5 working days to report it. Did someone forget to sign a consent form? 5 working days. What if a patient suffers a serious, totally unexpected side effect? You have just 10 days to investigate and report it to the authorities.
I really want to zero in on that number. 5. 5 working days. In the normal corporate world, 5 days is literally nothing, right? It's a few emails, a couple meetings, and a weekend. But in clinical compliance, it is a ticking time bomb. If you delay reporting an emergency deviation or a missing signature, it signals to the FDA that you have zero control over your own medical trial. Delays are completely unacceptable.
Finally, part 6, the cost of non-compliance. What actually happens if you just decide to treat these federal rules as mere suggestions?
Let me be clear, the stakes here go way beyond a corporate slap on the wrist. If you ignore the rules, the FDA can instantly pull the plug on your entire study, which means millions of dollars instantly down the drain. But it gets so much more personal than that. Investigators who cut corners or fake data get formally disqualified. That means being permanently blacklisted from ever doing clinical research again. And of course, the biggest cost of all, you introduce incredibly severe, totally unacceptable risks to human life.
So, I want to wrap up with a question for you to really think about. Knowing that this exemption isn't just a free pass, knowing those hard boundaries between the sponsor and the investigator, and knowing about that unforgiving 5-day reporting window, ask yourself, are your internal compliance processes actually strong enough to protect human lives while keeping your own career safe at the exact same time? It's a really high bar, for sure, but in medical innovation, it's the only bar that matters. Check your protocols, keep your patients safe, and stay compliant.
If you found this helpful or want to stay updated when this regulation changes, subscribe and support the channel. And if you need the full technical details on this CFR, click the link in the description below. See you next time.